Do you think you got to spend a lot of money to mulch your vegetable garden properly? Think again. Today we're going to talk about the best free mulch options for your garden. And I'm going to share my personal favorite with you that I use every single season, and it costs $0. So if you love no-cost gardening hacks and some free practical tips to help you grow a healthy vegetable garden, hit that like button. It tells YouTube that you found value in this video, and it will push it out to more gardeners just like you. Let's talk about why mulch matters in the first place. And to be honest with you, there are a few reasons we want to use mulch. The first one being weed suppression. This is going to be especially true in ground, although it's also true in raised beds. Mulch goes a long way in suppressing weeds and means that we have to do a lot less work in our vegetable gardens. The second thing it does is it creates moisture retention for the soil. So as we water or as it rains, our soil gets wet. If we leave that soil uncovered, it's going to dry out really, really quickly, and the water that's in that soil is going to be lost. Mulch covers the soil and keeps the water in the soil. It helps prevent against things like erosion, and it also protects the microbes and the biology, the worms that are in that soil, feeding on the plant matter and ultimately creating healthy soil for us. Mulch is also going to help keep that soil cooler, which ultimately keeps our plants a little bit cooler and less stressed out on those really hot summer days. And probably one of my favorite benefits of using mulch is if you're using an organic mulch, it breaks down over time and improves your soil quality. And quick tip, if you notice that some of your plants are beginning to droop around noontime, or you see some weeds starting to take over your garden beds, you probably need a thicker layer of mulch. For most of your mulches, you want a 2 to 3 inch layer. All right, so let's get into the best free mulch options. Option number 1 is going to be grass clippings. And I really like this as a mulch option because 1, it's so easy to source. As you mow your yard, just use a bag to collect those grass clippings. You can then take and layer those grass clippings around your vegetables that are already established. It's very important that if you're going to use grass clippings, you're going to use them around vegetable plants that are already established. You're not going to put them right up next to baby plants or plants you just planted or just transplanted. There have to be vegetables that are already established. And also you're going to want to do a fairly light layer of grass clippings. While most mulches you're going to want to do 2 to 3 inches, when it comes to grass clippings, this is not necessarily true unless they're dry. So dry grass clippings, you can use a little bit thicker layer, but if they are fresh, they're going to be pretty high in nitrogen. And if you pile them up too thick, they're going to mat and they're going to stink. But just an inch or so of these grass clippings is going to be enough to retain moisture in that soil and keep weeds down. They're going to break down really, really quickly, and they're going to add a lot of nitrogen to your soil. So this can go a long way if you notice that you have any type of nitrogen deficiency in your soil. Another thing to keep in mind with grass clippings, though, is you may have to replace this mulch layer pretty often because they do break down relatively fast. Option number 2 is going to be cardboard. And if you've gotten any Amazon boxes recently, you might be interested to know that the tape that Amazon now uses is biodegradable and it does break down in your garden. So it is safe to leave on your boxes and use that as either a mulch or an additive to your compost pile. When it comes to cardboard boxes specifically, this mulch is going to be best for your pathways and for underneath your garden beds. So if you're using raised beds, for instance, you can lay that mulch down in a fairly thick layer and then add your soil on top of it. You're going to not have any weeds that first season, or if you do, they're going to be very, very minimal. Now, it will break down over time, so by season number 2 or 3, you may start to see a little bit of those weeds crop in. But again, this cardboard layer is going to go a long way to adding fertility to the soil. It's going to feed the microbes and the worms, and it's going to be just a really great way to mulch underneath those raised beds or in your pathways. And in those pathways, you can actually do a light layer of either wood chips or compost over the top of that cardboard. The cardboard is going to retain the moisture. It's going to break down over time, feeding those microbes. And the wood chips or the compost are just going to keep it in place and make it look a little bit neater and a little bit nicer. Free mulch option number 3 is going to be wood chips. And wood chips are really awesome because they take a long time to break down. They cover the soil really, really well, and they have a lot of moisture retention properties. Wood will actually hold on to water and release it over time back into the soil. So especially if you're dealing with any type of drought conditions or conditions where maybe you don't have as frequent rain. I get a lot of rain in Florida, so I actually don't know what that's like. But my friends out in California, they get a lot less rain. So wood chips in those instances are going to be hugely beneficial, again, because they hold onto that water so well. And if you think about it, wood chips are actually the mulch option that Mother Nature uses to build the forest floor. And if you've ever paid attention to the forest floor, it is teeming with life and with plants and with microbes and with biology and with all the things. And wood chips are the base layer on that forest floor. Wood chips are going to go best in your perennial gardens, around your perennial plants, or in your garden pathways. They're also really great if you want to start a food forest and put those wood chips down as the base layer. You can actually get wood chips delivered for free by either calling your local arborist and asking them to just dump them in your yard, or you can use a service like Chip Drop. It's available in quite a lot of areas, maybe not all areas, but quite a lot of areas. It will actually partner you with a local arborist and have them deliver wood chips to your yard completely free. I will warn you, however, this is not a couple of buckets of wood chips. It is whole truckloads dumped in your front yard or your driveway. So just be mindful if you're using a service like Chip Drop, because they're going to send you a whole lot of wood chips. And free mulch option number 4, my favorite mulch option, is going to be leaves. A lot of people will shred them up and put them over their garden beds, and I do this sometimes, but to be honest with you, a lot of times I just rake the leaves up in the fall or even in the spring or even sometimes in the summer, because my trees like to drop leaves literally all the time. And I will rake them up into piles, put them on my garden beds, and wet them down so that they break down and so that they stay in place. Leaves are going to go a long way in adding organic matter to the soil. They're very rich in organic matter. They're light and they break down rather quickly in comparison to all the other mulch options that we've talked about, other than maybe grass clippings. Mulch is going to feed the microbes and the biology in that soil probably better than any of the other options that we talked about, just because they do break down so quickly. They're also going to go a long way in holding moisture into the soil and suppressing weeds. You can do a really deep layer of leaves if you want to, just because they're not going to be harmful to your plants. They're not super high in nitrogen like the grass clippings. They break down relatively quickly, and you don't have to worry about them adding a lot of carbon to the soil or tying up nitrogen to break down the same way you would with wood chips. Leaves obviously are completely free and they're really easy to source. If you have any trees in your yard dropping leaves, just rake them up. And if you don't, go to your neighbor and ask if you can rake up their leaves. Most people are going to be really happy that you take their leaves off their hands. And again, this is something you can do once or twice a year. So it's really low maintenance, low effort on your part. And again, it's going to go a long way in suppressing weeds and reducing how often you have to water. If I could only ever pick one free mulch option to use, it would be leaves. And to be honest with you, I do use it every single season in at least 1 or 2 of my garden beds. Let's wrap up by answering a couple common questions when it comes to the different mulch options we just discussed. The first question being, can mulch attract pests? The answer to this is yes, depending on what you're using. Now, when we're talking about free mulch options specifically, there are a lot of different mulch options, by the way, we could talk about for pest repellent. But when we're talking about these free mulch options specifically, there is a little bit of a worry about pests, especially when we're using something like leaves. But here's the thing, leaves are also gonna attract the beneficial microbes, worms, and things that we need in our soil. So there's a little bit of a trade-off there. It's important to note though that if we're taking really good care of our plants, if we're taking good care of our soil, we're keeping things watered but not saturated wet, and we're allowing some airflow at the base of our plants, pests aren't going to be that big of an issue. Question number 2 is, what about mixing wood chips into my soil? And you've probably heard this if you've done any research on gardening whatsoever, but wood chips can tie up nitrogen if mixed into the soil as they break down. Now, as we're laying them on top of the soil, and again, using them around our perennial plants or in our garden walkways, this is not going to be as big of an issue. And even when they do tie up the nitrogen, it is only temporary. They're not tying up the nitrogen forever. They're going to tie up the nitrogen as they break down. Bigger chunks of wood chips obviously take a long time to break down. So this is why we talk about them robbing the soil of nitrogen, because they will tie it up for quite some time. However, If we're doing things like amending our soil and adding, compost or things that are rich in organic matter and nitrogen, this is going to be a lot less of a worry. But it's also one of the reasons why we keep it out of the vegetable garden and we reserve it for the perennials and the pathways. We layer wood chips down. We try not to mix it into the soil. If a little bit gets mixed in here or there, no big deal. Don't worry about it too much. Just make sure that your soil is got enough nitrogen and enough organic matter that it can really sustain the things that you're growing. And question number 3 is, how often should I mulch my garden beds? And this is really going to be dependent on the mulch option that you use. Something like grass clippings, you might have to do a little bit more often. But something like leaves, usually you only have to do that maybe once or twice a year, depending on how thick of a layer you put down. You're gonna look for the mulch to begin to break down. You're gonna start to see, like I said, the evidence of weeds starting to creep in or your plants looking a little bit droopy. Those are gonna be signs and signals that your garden needs mulch and it's time to mulch it again. The key really is to maintain that 2 to 3 inch layer with everything except for grass clippings. You wanna do about a 1 inch layer on that one. But for everything else, you wanna maintain that 2 to 3 inch layer consistently. And as you start to see it break down, you can always top it off. You don't want it too thin so that it's not suppressing weeds and it's not retaining moisture, but you don't want it so thick that it's smothering your plants and keeping them from growing healthy. And if this video was helpful to you, hit that like button, share it with a friend, leave me some comments down below. Let me know what you thought of the video. Let me know about the mulch options you're using in your garden or if any of these resonated with you. And don't forget to download my free planting guide. I'm gonna leave it in the description box below, as well as some links to some of my favorite gardening products. These are affiliate links, so I do earn a small commission if you purchase through them at no additional cost to you. But it goes a long way in supporting the channel. I thank you guys so much for watching. I'm gonna leave some videos on your screen until the next ones come out. May your garden be full of grace. May you be abundantly blessed. We'll see you next time. Bye.